Hello, everyone. We're here today with Claire Johnson, my friend who will join me on the Board of Junior Achievement Americas for some time and will shortly, hopefully, join us on the Board of Junior Achievement Canada. And Claire is going to look at this afterwards and be like, Gary's twisting my arm while live on the podcast. So that then I can't say no when the time comes. But Claire, thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure. Absolutely. You have a way about you, though, that there is no way you can really say no, and you make it always so much fun. So I'm delighted to join you today.
Okay, Claire, it's it's about adding value to people so that for them it just makes so much sense. Why would they say no altogether? So that's the key.
I agree. And I think all the people that you speak to are excited to join you on your journey, wherever that happens to be. And so it was just such a delight to meet you a number of years ago now. It was during COVID. I was sitting in my gazebo and we were having that conversation around the Competition Bureau issues as it related to an acquisition that we were doing at the time. And as conversations do with me, and I think definitely with you, they turn to, so what else do you do? What's your thing? And then we got onto the topic of JA, and I was sold from then.
Well, and Claire, that's how you ended up joining you became the second Canadian to join ever to join the Board of Junior Achievement Americas, which it's a for anyone that is not familiar from our audience with Junior Achievement, it's an excellent organization that focuses on financial literacy and entrepreneurship for youth. And the Claire and I are both passionate about it, but that ended up being part of our journey. And I like Claire from the first moment I met her, and I said, look, what a great way to spend more time together. We can be on the same board.
It's been a delight, and I am excited to join JA Canada at the right time, which I'm hoping is just in a few weeks. So that should be great.
Perfect.
Excellent.
And Claire, a little bit for our audience, because some of them will know you, but some won't. A little bit about your background, sort of your upbringing, up until sort of you started your professional life, and then I'll ask you some questions about that as well.
Sure. So, everybody's upbringing really shapes who they are. My parents are both professionals. My mom's a pharmacist. My dad is really an engineer, so an MSc. And then the year I was born, he decided he was going to go and do his MBA. And so that seems very normal to me, given my life experience. But as I grew up in my life, I realized my father and my mother were quite special. My father is a lifelong learner. He's irrepressible to a fault at times, enthusiastic beyond most people's ability to manage. But my father really imbued in me a reasonable sense of lifelong learning. And he has changed careers multiple times. He has become a management consultant, and his real drive has always been about making people's lives better, making businesses better. He has, he's worked at JA. He did a number of volunteer things there. He worked for KISO, Canadian Executive Services Overseas, when he retired. He did M&A. He worked doing, you name it, particularly in the plastics extrusion. So he married this technical ability with this real passion for business and growth. And at 89, he is somewhat bored because he only is part of the choir and he goes to a variety of other group meetings just to keep connected in the industry. But I think my father views himself as a 25-year-old man in an 89-year-old body. And I am gifted with having him as a father. I started delivering newspapers when I was 10. I've really had a job since I was young. There was really not a lot of sitting around for me as a child, mostly, I think, genetic, and then also by example. And so then before my professional career, I met my husband in high school. And my husband, I would say, is the backbone of my career. He has been a huge supporter. We have traded off. We have a large family. We have made decisions together. And he has really enabled my career in a way that I can't be more grateful for. So I went to Queen's University, graduated there in commerce a few years ago. I won't tell you how many, more than 25. But actually, I'm proudly wear my age. And then I went to PwC, and at PwC, it was such a great opportunity because I got to work in a number of different industries in a very short period of time. So I got my CA, or my CPA, as they call it now. And from there, I sort of launched into my investment servicing career. Girlfriend I'd worked with at PwC called me shortly after the CIBC Mellon joint venture occurred and said, "Hey, I've got this operating team. Come join me. It'll be fun." And it was immersive and terrifying and absolutely delightful, taking this team of 30 people at the time through a year end and doing all the wonderful, challenging things that are attached to getting a group of people through a challenging time and feeling like we had done a good job for our clients and for the group as well. So that was kind of the beginning of my career a number of years ago. So maybe I'll turn it back to you to see if you have any, where you'd like to take this.
And no, and it's, I think that's great background there because, again, people sort of may know you professionally or in a variety of contexts, but it's like, where did Claire grow up? How did that come about? And that's actually always fun to find out a bit more about our speakers on the podcast. And Claire, obviously, it's been a very impressive career, and certainly like that start with an account, one of the big four accounting firms, makes a lot of sense as well, because it will be a good background to end up in this space. But you talked about having a large family, and certainly how important it is to have a supportive partner, because it's such these things can never be done in a vacuum. Talk us a little bit about through your career. I mean, now you're the CEO of RBC Trust, and before that at the TSX Trust. So both critical roles. But how did that come about, and sort of what advice would you have for executives, but especially or aspiring executives, but especially women that want to do a lot of this, especially with the balancing act that comes with a family as well as this executive roles?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I love the question when you and I were talking about it before, and anytime I get the opportunity to discuss it. It's a tough process. It really is. But it really starts with making sure that you and your partner are in alignment as to what you're doing together. And from there, on the professional side, it's really about putting your hand up to try new things, about being the go-to person if there's something new to do, even if you're not entirely sure how to do it. I've always liked to jump in with both feet and then try and figure things out, because I know I can ask other people for help. I can come together and help to organize for a better outcome. I would say that the biggest thing to do is really put your hand up when people give you opportunities. I would say that there were times in my career when I was a bit surprised by the opportunities. One of them was when my boss, who was the CEO of CIBC Mellon at the time, said, "Okay, so you're running product now. That's great." I had started that group up and was really proud of the work that we were doing. And he said, "Now you're going to go run marketing." And I kind of looked around and I'm like, I'm an accountant. And he's like, yeah. So I said, "Oh, okay." And then I wandered away for 2 weeks. Like I seriously thought that he must be joking. And then the head of HR came to me and said, "So when are we making that happen?" And I said, "Really, like stick people is about the extent of my capabilities here." And she said, "Yes, but you know the clients." And then I went and talked to a neighbor of mine who used to run HR for a large firm. And he said to me, "Do you think your boss knows how to do that job?" "Well, no, but he runs that." I'm like, "Oh, yeah." He said, "He sees something in you." I'm like, "Okay." And so it was that combination of confidence from a history of success and a little bit of failure as well, right? That failure keeps you a bit humble, but largely success. with his view of what was possible for me, which really allowed me to jump in with both feet and say, okay, what do I know about this? Who's the team here? What are we trying to accomplish? And bringing the team together and to really make a difference as we were moving forward. It is that same boss actually who brought me over to TSX Trust later. He was on the board and is still on the board there, Tom Monahan. And he then said, look, come join TSX Trust. You know the product. Yeah, but it's at the Toronto Stock Exchange. It's very different. He said, and I'm like, okay, I will apply. And I just loved the experience. It was wonderful. I was working with Louis Anastasiopoulos, who you know, one of the best leaders I have ever worked with. He is a little bit younger than me, but so experienced in dealing with people, so human and driven, all at the same time. There's no one that I've met that works harder than Louis. But at the same time, what he allowed me to do was move things forward, check back with him. And what was important about that was asking him if he had any advice for me. By the way, I don't like the word feedback. I find feedback to be very negatively focused. So I always ask people for advice because it allows them then to think a bit broader and to dream a little bit with you about, well, what should we be doing here together? So Louis was very instrumental in really allowing me to evolve my CEO leadership with the teams with confidence. He would support me, push me in important areas, and really allowed me to try out some new things, which is actually where you and I met around that acquisition, which was a ton of fun, and a lot of work. And you'll probably hear me say the word fun a lot in this podcast. I have loved most of my career because for me, having fun is about being in flow. It's about doing great work together. It's about outcomes and really achieving things together with teams of people that individually we wouldn't be able to do, but together we succeed exceptionally well.
No, and I think, Claire, a lot of good takeaways there, but even as simple as give me like any advice you have for me versus feedback. Like you're right. I was thinking about it as you said it, and I'm like, it does make you think differently when you put it that way. And, when you think of the importance of communication in leadership or in all business dealings, simple positioning of certain wordings can matter so much in the outcome. And that's critical in that sense when, because people think bigger than just here's how you can do certain things better, but rather here's where you can go when you ask for advice. It's really powerful.
Mm-hmm. And the other side of that is how can I help? My new team at RBC Investor Services, I really make a point of at the end of every meeting asking them how I can help. Because as I've learned over time, it's a bit of a vanity to think that I know how to help them. In some ways you do, right? In some ways, because of the experience I've had with operations and marketing and product and finance and strategy, I understand the operations of the systems of business. But I understand it from my lens. I don't know what they're experiencing. I like to think I understand the talent deeply across the teams because that helps me understand what is the art of the possible. But when they're faced with something that they're trying to work on, offering them my help and asking them how I can help, hopefully allows them to think more broadly and deeply about how we can accomplish these things together rather than me saying, well, why don't you try this? Because that often misses the point. So I try to be a bit more open-ended, particularly with very senior leaders. More junior leaders, I tend to ask, what are the things that they've considered? And if I see that they're sort of on a slightly sideways path, I'll say, have you thought about in the event that it would sort of pull them back? I hate to go into telling. It's not a good position to be in as a leader, because it takes away the power from the individual. So anyway, a little bit of my.
No, and I think that's very important, again, about positioning of how you say certain things, Claire. And that's like, for me, it's actually one of the most important things that I try to get out in the podcast is these learnings that leaders distill over time. It becomes probably some of the most critical takeaways of each one of our episodes, because the individual experiences themselves, they can be a good story and an interesting career path, but the distilling of the learnings that's the bottling that up is so important.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Claire, a couple of things I wanted to ask you along those lines. So you've taken on some challenges, even that example around marketing, where there was a lot of things you had to figure out because a lot of it was net new to you. And we all struggle with this at one point in time or another in our careers, where we have a bit of this imposter syndrome. So how do you get over that? How do you how did you learn some of the things where you were unsure about how to approach it, etc.? Like, what advice do you have for that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the imposter syndrome, I would say, was probably the worst for me in my late 30s and early 40s, because I was thrust into roles that I was excited about, but also didn't have a lot of depth in how to get the day-to-day done.
Mhm.
And so I felt a bit silly, if I was to, put it in a very plain way, sitting in a meeting telling people, because I guess that was really the part that I found difficult, was like, I'm telling these people what to do, but they're better experts than I am. So a very wise boss that I had said to me, look, we're going to send you on the Judy project. I don't know if you've ever heard about this project, but it's through Rotman, the Rotman program. And he was clearly seeing something in me that I wasn't able to activate. And really what it was about women acknowledging their aspirations. And as part of that week-long process, they really took you through engagement with people. And one of the things I learned deeply was that asking for help is the greatest form of flattery. And so when you say to someone, what are your ideas here? What are you thinking? And how can we accomplish this? So you're talking about the thing. It's not you versus me. It's about trying to accomplish this thing. How can we get this done? And understanding, obviously, frameworks of project management, really important. Project management, change management, behavioral science, neuroscience. Like, how do you get people from here to here? So there's a lot of learnings that I have done in those areas. But really importantly, if we're all focusing on this thing together, how can we get there? And when you get great people together, it's amazing what you can accomplish. And so I no longer saw myself as having to be the expert on the thing. I saw myself as having to be an expert in activating people and bringing them together to do tough work that they couldn't otherwise do together without proper leadership. So that was really my switch. And then also, too, I started not caring about things that don't matter so much, right? I'm like, oh, well, if they don't think I have a good idea, maybe they have a better one. Like, and at a point, you worry less about things that are unimportant. And so I would say that at this stage in my career, particularly, I'm delighted with what I'm doing. And if there are others who can do it better, all the better. Just bring them in. Let's work together.
Well, and Claire, every leader has been through this in one capacity or another, I'm sure. I'll tell you that as someone that went through without a technology background to then go into the technology world, it's a big learning curve. And to this day, obviously, we have a lot of experts that know far more than I do in many of the areas. So I've been through very much similar experience where I'm like, okay, I need to understand what they're doing first. So I can lead effectively, and it's but that humility around it just becomes so critical.
What are the best questions that you find are most effective if you're doing something?
and a lot of it was some independent reading and even podcasts. Like the very reason why we do some of this, where you're like, okay, let me understand this so I can actually ask smart questions, so that I actually even know what to ask. And I mean, you can only imagine the world of AI, right? Like it's so much of it is new and no different than the marketing example you gave. It's like, what did I know about marketing as well? Like if you think about it, like it's sure, like during the MBA program, you learn some sort of things, but like when you actually have marketing experts there, like a lot of it is around knowing how to ask the right question, like extracting that information.
I think, Gary, one of the things that I know about you is that you focus on the client. And so no matter what we're doing, in the marketing, it's just really about understanding your client. What are your client's concerns? What is your client trying to accomplish? And so when you start with the client and then you work backwards and say, okay, well, what are the things that they're looking for from us? Therefore, how do we need to organize ourselves? Therefore, how do we need to speak with them? How do we need to update them? How do we need to evolve our products? It becomes this very natural, and I don't want to say easy because these things are not easy, but it becomes a much
Right.
more natural North Star for anything that you're trying to do. And AI, what's the outcome you're looking for? Like some
For sure.
really core pieces here help to drive success in those conversations and in those prioritizations.
When we see this, Claire, and the next question I have for you is around like how you've prioritized hiring and building teams to actually that complement your skill set. But and I'll preface this with this, that one of the things that we've seen on this podcast time after time is like that deep sense of caring for clients and engaging clients from many other successful people that have been on it. Because ultimately, then it makes it far more natural. If you approach it with, I care about you and the outcomes for you as a client, then the solutions and everything else that is provided for them, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's always that iterative approach of like, hey, I'm here and I'm caring. I care to be a partner. Always will produce better results than like, let me just sell something to you, which is very transient and not going to build a long-term relationship.
Yeah, I was on a sales course. It must have been 15 years ago. And I remember sitting in the session and just having a light bulb moment as the leader there said, they don't care what you know until they know that you care. And it just struck me so deeply because I know as the recipient of sales tactics that you're not going to be able to sell to me unless you understand what I'm about. And
And
so it's it really is about caring for your clients, caring for your client's success, helping them to achieve their aspirations. And it it is such a critical part of those longer term relationships. So investment servicing, RBC Investor Services, we have around 1,600 clients, same amount of employees. And many of these relationships span more than 25 years. And if you don't know what your client is trying to accomplish, if you don't care for them as an institution and for them personally, the trust level isn't there to continue on that relationship in a healthy way. And it's all about building a foundation of trust in order for them to be able to rely on you and to be able to reward you day in and day out with the relationship, which drives obviously financial returns. But it is a people business, isn't it? Everything's about people. AI. I'm sure you're telling me. It's going to be all about people. That's what's always going to make the difference.
And Claire, on that note, if you think about, the right now you have teams that are responsible for 1,600 people more broadly. So when you are, and obviously some of the team currently has been in place, but similarly you've had to hire critical roles at every position you've had over the sort of the last few organizations. What were some of the criteria? What was sort of the magic sauce that provided the best outcomes for you? Like, what did these people have in common or as key traits?
Yeah, it's I would say the most important part about the senior leadership is that they have a very human-centric approach. Uh, I normally look at hiring in three ways: fit, will, and skill. Um, Skill, often at senior leadership levels, is a given. They will be skilled in some very important technical way. Their will is often already quite strong because they're strivers, they're driven. The fit is really important. And that part is all about how they're going to be able to make change in an organization, how they're going to introduce themselves, bring ideas, bring activation to teams. And so I really am a huge believer in the human side of this, because you can be the most technically brilliant person and you will not get out of the starting gate because nobody, and frankly nobody will follow you. So that's really what I look for. I I also had a bit of an aha a number of years ago around the science of change and the neuroscience of change. It's not easy to make change in organizations. There's all sorts of inertia, and then there's all sorts of preconceived notion about where we're going and where we're heading. And so to bring teams together and use, say, a program or the ADKAR method that they use is really important to get large groups of people moving forward together. Um, and when I'm hiring, I sort of look at it and go, would I like to spend time with this person? Do they complement my skills? I don't need somebody who is a clone of me. I need people who are going to challenge me, people who are going to have a good time, even in difficult situations, because it's going to be about how do we get through these difficult things together and still respect and enjoy each other's company, because that's going to create long-lasting bonds that are productive um, from both a financial perspective and from an employee perspective as well.
No, and
Actually,
I think that
I'm going to tell you a fun story. When I joined,
great.
when I joined RBC Investor Services, I was taking the opportunity to meet with my leadership in advance of actually walking in the front door, because I thought, oh, this will be awkward if I don't meet with these folks and just say hello on my first day. So I met with my head of operations, and we were meeting for breakfast, which of course I subsequently discovered he doesn't eat breakfast, but and that was it was a lesson for me. But I said to him, and I had asked everybody this, what do you think the most important thing is for us to focus on? And he said employee engagement. And I was like, this is going to be such a great job. My head of operations isn't saying to me this technical issue or that process, but he's saying to me, it's all about the people. And so that was just, frankly, a bit of a joyous moment for him, for us, for me particularly, because I didn't know him. And maybe it was also a joyous moment for him also. I don't know. And who likes having a new boss? It's not a lot of fun. You have to train this new person. But we've had a lot of fun along the way. And so really, if we can find leaders who are focused on the people, getting the right people in the right roles, we can accomplish incredible.
No, and I think that's a big part of the formula, and the everlasting challenge of finding those gems that will help us advance things along. And Claire, I will get back a bit more to the sort of business advice component, but one thing that just from a industry trends perspective, because sort of thinking of your journey through CIBC Mellon, TSX, and sort of now at RBC Trust, how do you see the industry evolving, or how have you seen it evolve, and where do you think it's going just in general terms?
Yeah. So the industry is a fantastic industry because it continues to grow and evolve. And from an investment opportunity perspective, there continue to be new products, new ways of accounting for them, which for some people might not be all that exciting, but it's exciting to me. Our clients are always looking for three things. They're looking for efficiency. So when they outsource their back office, they're looking for efficiency. They're looking for risk mitigation. As you noted previously, we work in a very regulated industry, and so it's exceptionally important that we manage risk. But importantly, they're looking for innovation as well. And that is innovation to continue to help them achieve their aspirations of investment returns and cost efficiency. So the two pieces that are most important to them tend to be, can we all manage the growth in asset types? So private alternatives, those are becoming more mainstream, and then also doing it at a cost-effective way. And so that is really perennial. That's been going on the whole time I've been in the industry. It's accelerating a little bit with the increased use of technology, which is great in a lot of ways, because it allows our clients to do more than they could have previously, even 5 years ago. So it's that's sort of the main trends that we're seeing.
Well, and it's I think the evolution and sort of where things are and where things are going is just so important for us as leaders to plan. Here's what our organization should be shaped like to get ahead for the future, and that's part of the reason I was asking that question. It's to your point, it's all about the people and how do we get our people to be future-proof or preparing for the future in many ways.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, education, of the employees is so important. A lot of them will do a lot of self-learning, but I've really loved investors at RBC Investor Services. They have this leadership model from RBC, and it really focuses on being a constant learner. There's 4 categories, and I love how they think about being an agile leader, about challenge, about growth, about speaking the truth as well. But the leadership model really emphasizes learning. And what I've really enjoyed about RBC Investor Services is that we have taken the opportunity as a leadership team to say learning is really important. Not just learning, but learning together. And so we've brought these teams together for leadership training. We were doing some agile business training just the other day. I sat in on one of the sessions for 3 sections over 2 hours a day for 3 days. And all of my leaders have to go through that same training. So this isn't just for them, it's for us. So learning together is very powerful because it then gives us tools together to activate and drive forward with. So I think if you're not learning, first of all, you're going to lose some really great people because people are wanting to learn more and do more and hone their craft. The book Drive, right? It's about mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And so I can give people a lot more autonomy when they're masterful, and purpose is really about driving for client success, which I don't think people find always all that exciting. But when you care about people, you care about making them successful. And so when your clients or your colleagues are successful, it has a great sense of purpose for you.
And Claire, in a couple of moments, we'll go into our portion of the podcast, which is what I call the rapid fire questions, where I ask you certain things and it's the first word that comes to mind. But before we do that, 2 quick, one question and then just one open suggestion. So as in terms of the question, it's you've clearly had to manage a family and sort of a very busy career life or very demanding career life. What's been some of the tricks around that balance, which we know it's an everlasting challenge? We're never going to get perfection, but what are some of the suggestions there? And then this is the open-ended one, is to the extent there was any piece of advice for leaders out there that we didn't get a chance to get to in my previous questions.
Yeah.
You can never get out of it in a podcast.
Yeah, I love these questions. So, I would say that so I have 5 children, and a husband, a very loving husband of 32 years. And my children range in age from 9 to 21 at this point. And I worked part-time for 7 years because it was important for our family. I had an amazing boss who, when I went back to work after having had the twins, so the twins are my first, I said to him, I think I'd like to work 1 day a week. And he laughed. And then he said, well, how about 2? And I said, okay. And that 2 was somewhere between 2 and 11 days a week, depending upon the project. And what I loved about it was that I was given projects that were stretch for me. They moved me all over the organization in different areas. And it just allowed me to keep my mind active in an area of work that I really enjoyed, as well as being home with my children. We also spent quite a bit of money on services. You just can't do it the way other people do with 1 or 2 children. Your house is always going to be a little messier. Your children are going to be mostly clothed, always fed. Their hair might not be fully brushed. They were usually clean. I love my children desperately, and you do have to prioritize your family, though. If there's somebody that is unwell, I had a son who had celiac disease that was undiagnosed for a while, and so the world stops. It just does. And so I would say that you need to make it work for you and your husband or your partner, because that's your foundation, and everything else is gravy. So ask for what you want all the way along. And I encourage my employees to do that. I encourage my family to do that, because when you ask for what you want, it actually just liberates you to say, well, this is actually what I want. And then if you get something less than that, then you'll work with that. But don't let people guess. Just really drive for that. And then what was the second part to that? I think you were
just any general business advice for leaders out there that we didn't get to during the podcast that you're like, oh, there was a tidbit I would have liked to share, but Gary didn't get a chance to ask.
Yeah. So for business leaders, I would say this: find great people, work with them, build them up, and everybody has a story. Everybody has challenges, and it's your job as a leader to bring out the best in your people, and that will be personally satisfying at the same time as it will be satisfying for the individual. It'll be part of their career success, hopefully. It's a great honor.
No, it's all excellent points there, and I know that they'll resonate with the audience. All right, so we're moving on to the final portion of our podcast, and not because there were many more things that I had to ask you that I just have to skip because sheer time, but the I have a good team that gives me a track and says, Gary, yeah, you have to be succinct.
I need a team like that. I need a team like that. Okay, keep going.
Well, the good thing is they're comfortable enough to tell me, Gary, keep it brief. Sometimes you can be long-winded. So on the rapid fire questions, Claire, this is sort of the first word that comes to mind. So I'll ask you a question and don't overthink it, whatever comes to mind. So what is your favorite word?
I'm going to give you a phrase. How can I help?
How can I help? All right, I love that. What word do you hate?
No.
Brilliant. What word do you have a hard time pronouncing, if any?
I have a slight lisp. I cannot say orange juice very well.
Yeah, that you said it perfectly.
Sounds fine, doesn't look right.
What is your favorite word in another language, if any?
Merci.
very can never go wrong with being thankful.
That's right.
How many languages do you speak?
If you ask my husband, one poorly. No, I only speak one. It's a little bit embarrassing. I took French all the way through high school and even did it in first year university. I don't get enough time to practice. But English, a little bit of French, and I took grade 10 Spanish, which I loved.
Excellent. And then the final one, what's one word to describe yourself by?
Striving.
Striving. And I think that's very accurate to knowing you there. Well, Claire, thank you very much for joining me today on this podcast. It's been wonderful having you here, and I truly appreciate you making the time to join me.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for asking me.